Well, let me begin officially now and say thank you to all of you for being here, and let's give a warm Marquette welcome to the head of Midwest Airlines, Tim Hoeksema.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, we've all been reading about the sale of Midwest Airlines, and why don't you bring us up to date on where things stand as of today?
Well, I think all of you know we accepted an offer to purchase Midwest Airlines from TPG. It's in the process of being closed. We hope to close by the end of this year. The merger agreement is being reviewed right now by the Department of Justice, and that'll take probably another month or two at least for them to review that. And then we'll close by the end of the year, hopefully, and continue operating as an independent company, as Midwest Airlines, continuing to do what we've been doing and serve the needs of this community and others with the best care in the air. So we're very pleased with the way the entire thing played out. TPG is a private equity firm. It's a very large private equity firm, if you're not familiar. TPG has about $30 billion of investments. Their first venture as a company was buying Continental Airlines and taking Continental Airlines about 13 or 14 years ago out of bankruptcy. If you were to add together the sales volume of all the companies that TPG controls, it would be in the Fortune top 10. So it's a very large company. They're the largest single player in the airline industry from a private equity point of view. They have an outstanding reputation. They're very smart in our industry. And I think the fact that they looked at our business plan, got to know about our company and flew us and decided, hey, this is really a good value in the marketplace. We see some very good things. I think speaks very well of our people, of our business plan, of our strategy going forward. So we're very excited.
Are there any potential snags in this process? I know the Justice Department asked for some more information, for instance. Does that mean anything?
No, we're not surprised they asked for some additional information, but everybody that we consulted with feel that there's no problem getting this approved by the Department of Justice. So we're just pushing right ahead.
One of the gentlemen who wanted to buy your airline, Joe Leonard from AirTran.
I've heard of him, yeah.
He suggested that there could be problems because of the fact that Northwest Airlines is a passive investor in this deal, about 47%. And that maybe federal regulators would not look at that in a positive light. Any response to that?
Well, first of all, Northwest is not buying us, TPG is. They are a passive investor. If it ever came to the point when down the road, several years, that Northwest wanted to buy us, the DOJ would again review the application at that time in terms of an acquisition. It's really interesting if you look at it. If you look at the combination of Northwest and Midwest Airlines in Milwaukee, if we were to merge, we would have about 69% market share. If you look at AirTran and Midwest together, it's about 64 or 65% market share. We overlap on one market with Northwest, on 7 markets with AirTran. And DOJ approved the AirTran situation had that gone through. So we don't see any problem whatsoever.
You know, I know this is a terrible thing to ask you to do because the airline industry certainly has its ups and downs, as we've all seen over the last 6 or 7 years. But take us 5 years out. I've heard you talk about what the future might be for Midwest. You really don't know. It's hard to tell, isn't it?
Well, obviously, I don't think anybody can exactly predict 5 years into the future with any kind of business. For the last 23 years, we have focused on growing, focus on providing good service to our customers. Our strategic plan calls for us to continue to grow, add more airplanes, and we've been growing. We'll grow about 15% this year, about 11, 12% next year, so we have a plan to continue to grow. In terms of TPG, these private equity firms typically buy a company, hold them for 3 to 7 years, and then plan on selling. And so they're always looking for an exit strategy. So, you know, what will happen 5 years from now, it's hard to say. Might we be spun in an IPO? Possible. Might we be sold to someone else? Is Northwest one of those possibilities? Yes. I wouldn't bet any personal money, whether they would or wouldn't, and it's just really hard to predict what would happen exactly. But the private equity firms typically have about a 3 to 7 year time horizon, although they've owned, TPG has owned parts of one airline for up to 11 years. So it's really hard to say what will happen exactly. But our focus is to continue to grow, continue to provide more service, and provide the best service we possibly can.
I heard you say at a gathering not too long ago that you now know what a hostile takeover feels like. What did it feel like?
Well, first of all, the hostile starts with a capital H, I found out, and you know, I jokingly told someone, and I guess I can say that in a group of friends, it's probably as close as I'll ever get to childbirth. It lasted about 9 months. At the inception, it wasn't voluntary. That has another word which I won't use, but I will tell you that at numerous times through the process, I would wake up and read the morning paper and have morning sickness. It was extremely painful at the very end, but it turned out good, so you kind of forget how painful it was. So that's probably as close as I'll ever get. It was a very difficult, very trying period. You never knew what was going to happen any given day. We spent hours and hours and hours and canceled everything personal and really put tremendous effort into looking after the best interests of our shareholders, the best interest of our stakeholders, and you know, we have lots of stakeholders in terms of employees, in terms of the communities that we serve, our vendors, our suppliers, and obviously our customers. And so we worked very hard to try and be sure that the outcome of this takeover attempt would be best for all of those constituencies. And sometimes it's hard to balance all of that, but we worked very hard to try and find an outcome, and I think we eventually did, that was good for all of our constituencies. But it was a very trying time. Spent more time, I guess I can say that in this building, with lawyers in the last 9 months than I ever wanted to, and I stopped telling lawyer jokes, you know. And somebody shared that stop telling lawyer jokes because lawyers don't like them, and no one else thinks they're jokes. So, but anyway, but no lawyer jokes today. We spent a lot of time with lawyers and investment bankers. We'll probably spend in this year period between $10 and $12 million total on legal fees and investment banking fees. So it's a financial burden, a huge burden on the company, and a huge burden on a handful of us who really worked on this hostile takeover. We worked very hard to try and get the other 97% of our company to focus on the customer, not lose sight of the day-to-day operation and run the business day-to-day. But it was a very, very, very intense period, and I'm really glad it's over.
Is it just about business, or frankly, does it get personal after a while?
Well, I think you have to work very hard to try and be sure it doesn't get personal. You know, I think there's a lot of personal feeling and emotion in trying to do the best for all those stakeholders that I talked about. And so, but we really worked hard to try and take the high road, to not let your feelings interfere with the best possible decisions that you make day in and day out, and to really do the best you can for all the stakeholders. And then that's really what it's all about.
You said throughout this process you were guided by really two principles, and one was you have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders of the corporation. But the other is, and I've heard you say this, is that you feel that there is a moral obligation to the employees and the communities you serve. In the business world, some people might say, really, your only responsibility is to the shareholders. Do you think you're unique in that belief?
Well, I think, I hope that everyone in my position feels an obligation to all the stakeholders that they're responsible for. And Wisconsin, from a law point of view, has provisions that allows a company to consider value of the stakeholders who are not necessarily shareholders. So we have to look at the value from a shareholder point of view. Wisconsin law allows us also to look at value in terms of other stakeholders, the employees, communities, customers, et cetera, that I mentioned. So we were able to look at all of that. And I really would hope that anyone in my position would look at all of those constituencies and try and come up with a solution that is in their best interest. Does that always happen? Probably not. But fortunately, in our situation, we were able to come up with a solution that I think did speak to the needs of all of the stakeholders involved.
How have employees at your company reacted to the decision to sell to TPG?
I think there's been a very positive reaction. And as we have shared with our employees, the quality of TPG, and of course, those of us who've been there for a long time remember the days when we operated Midwest Airlines when we were owned by Kimberly-Clark Corporation as a private company. And so going back to being a private company is something that in many respects has some pluses rather than minuses. But the employee reaction was very, very positive. As I said, TPG has a great reputation. They have a reputation for being a company of integrity. And every dealing we've had with them since has been terrific. It's kind of what you see is what you get. They're very straight shooters. They have that reputation in the industry. So our employees have been very, very pleased with the outcome.
Sometimes private equity firms get the reputation of being only concerned about short-term gains, and the theory goes is that they want you to slash costs, slash employment, cut it down to the bare bones so they can make the most money possible. What do you say to people who say, well, isn't that a possibility?
Well, certainly the private equity firms of the world are in it to buy a company, to turn it around, so to speak, or to improve it and sell it at a very good profit. I mean, they're looking at several times the money when they cash out compared to what they bought. There are different approaches to that. Some companies you go into and a private equity firm sees there's high cost, there's lots of opportunity to slash cost and change things and really improve, or a company coming out of bankruptcy with a very low stock price that has some great upside potential. Or in TPG's case, they bought Neiman Marcus. And they saw a great value there in an upscale quality product to the marketplace that had some upside potential, and that's why they bought Neiman Marcus. They, in their own words, put us in that Neiman Marcus category. We've already, the last 5 years, since September 11th, have cut a lot of cost. Our unit costs are down over 32%, excluding fuel, in the last 5 years. So we've done that. And everybody in the airline industry has done that because it was essential. We have a strategic plan going forward that I think allows us to significantly increase our profitability. And they saw that, and TPG said, hey, that makes a lot of sense to us. We think it's a good growth strategy, and we think we want to be a part of that. So we were not in that category of companies that the problem was costs that are too high.
So they're looking for growth.
They're looking for growth and improved profitability.
I want you to talk about an expression that you often use. It's called differentiate or die. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, a differentiate or die, which I do use often, is the title of the best article I never read. Somebody sent me an article entitled Differentiate or Die, and I deliberately to this day have not read that, because what it means to me is that if you're running a company, if you're selling a product, I don't care if you're making potato chips or widgets or whatever, if you want people to continue to buy that product, use that service, there has to be a reason to do that. And that reason to me, it really has to be differentiated in some way than someone else. And if you look at anything that lasts for a long time, there's some level of differentiation from something else. There's a restaurant that is differentiated, it's special, it has great food, it has great service, great location. And so as we talk internally, if we want customers to continue to fly on Midwest Airlines, we want to continue to grow, continue to have the loyalty that we enjoy, we have to be a little different than the other people. We have to provide a level of service that is better. So we talk often about a differentiated product, about something that is unique and special in the marketplace. And we've been recognized for that from an industry point of view, but the best recognition we get is loyal ridership. And you know, if there's any pluses to this hostile effort that lasted 9 or so months, it's that the support that we have from this community, Kansas City, around our system, was just so clear. It was loud and clear and evident. So many. We got probably 70,000 signatures on the Save the Cookie petition. We got thousands of notes and letters and emails and just great indications of support. And so if there was a plus side to this, it's the great support that we got from virtually everybody that we came in contact with.
You mentioned the cookies, and we all kind of smile because that's a favorite part of the flight, I know, for many people. But that's a point of differentiation. It's a little special experience on a Midwest flight. But does it get hard for you to maintain those points of differentiation? You want to fly more people, so you're going to be adding some seats to your plane. So there'll be, unlike the 717s, there'll be fewer of the two across seating. You have to make adjustments. Is it hard to hang on to those points of differentiation?
First of all, you talk about the cookie, and they're delicious. I haven't turned one down in 22 years. But to us, it's the cookie is not something that you eat. The cookie to us is, although they're good, the cookie is really symbolic of the type of experience that we're trying to provide. And in our values, when we started Midwest Airlines 23 years ago, we said, who do we want to be? What kind of company do we want to be? We sat down and we wrote out our 4 core values. And one of them was service to the customer. And we said we want to treat each customer as if they were a guest in our own home. And the cookie really represents, to me anyway, just that whole relationship with the customer, that whole psyche of trying to treat somebody as if they're a guest in their own home. And Mike, you're absolutely right. You have to work at that all the time. We measure every month input from our customers. Thousands of customers tell us every month how we're doing in all the customer touch points that they have told us are important. What we did a number of years ago, we went out to customers and said, what's important to you? And then they said, this. And we said, okay, great. And we wrote those things down. We went to our employees and they said, this is what our customers are saying is important to them, and this is what we're going to measure. And every month, thousands of customers tell us how we're doing against each one of those points. We share that internally with our employees every single month, every single station. We have big posters in every station that tells how we're doing in terms of all the things that are important to our customers. So we work at it very, very hard to try and stay focused. And so instead of taking a 717 and putting 117 seats in it, we are going to modify our airplanes. We're going to have 40 2x2 seats and 59 2x3 seats starting the middle of next year. We're going to have more legroom in those 40 seats. The fare is going to be the same for business-type fares that it has been. And we'll have more seats for people to take advantage of us more. So we think it'll be kind of a win-win, something we have to do, but we're trying to do it in a way that maintains that product differentiation from the rest of the industry.
You mentioned that service to the customer is one of the values, but perhaps you could share with us the core values of this airline. There are 4 of them. What are the other 3?
Service to the customer is one. Second is mutual respect. We believe that everyone we come in contact with should be treated with the utmost of respect, and that's employees, that's customers, that's vendors, that's everybody. Everybody should be treated with respect. Number 3 is responsiveness. We operate in a fiercely competitive industry. We have to be responsive to changes out in the marketplace. We have to be responsive to each other internally. And last but absolutely not least is honesty and integrity. That is an absolute value at Midwest Airlines. Everybody knows it and understands it. When you just look around at this country, look at the Enrons of the world, the WorldComs, and all the garbage that goes on in some businesses, we said that's not for us. Honesty and integrity is an absolute value. So those are the 4 core values that were important 23 years ago before we started Midwest Airlines, and they're just as important today.
Your faith is important to you, and I think I was struck by something a number of years ago when I was interviewing you. You mentioned to me that really, if you break it down, the business model for Midwest is sort of based on how you feel about your faith in some respects. Describe that for us.
Well, I mean, if you look at those 4 core values that we have, there's a biblical basis for every one of those. Customer service. The Bible talks about servanthood and treating others with respect in terms of mutual respect. Being responsive, putting in a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. and honesty and integrity. The Bible says a lot about that. So I would tell you that those are important, good values for running a business, but they're also biblical values.
So it's treat others as you would want to be treated.
Absolutely.
When you boil it down.
Absolutely, and you know, it's really a lot of common sense, and the Bible has a lot of common sense in it.
I want to ask you on a personal note, will it feel a little strange? You mentioned starting private, then being public, and going private again. Will it feel a little strange, even though you're still running the company, to know that there are some other folks who actually own the company?
I know that in my entire career, there's been folks that own the company, and there'll be less of them now. There used to be thousands of them.
So it's easier in some
there'll
ways.
be a few. So in some respects, and we'll probably save somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million a year just by being private, in terms of all the annual meetings and SEC filings and Sarbanes-Oxley work and all that kind of stuff that you do as a public company. Listed on a stock exchange and all those things. So there'll be a lot of savings just by being private.
Also savings, I would imagine, because of Northwest's involvement in this deal.
Yeah, one of the things, and we've had a relationship with Northwest really for a long time. We had a frequent flyer partnership with them for about 10 or 11 years, and we stopped it for a while, and then we went back with them about a year ago. But we also recently announced a co-chair, which starts next month. So we have a partnership with them in that respect, which I think will be good for Milwaukee travelers. And there's some cost-saving opportunities. For example, in placement of our insurance. Because of our co-chair and our relationship now, we'll go to the insurance market for hull and liability insurance, along with the consortium of Northwest, Continental, and all the feeder carriers that feed Northwest. And so our insurance rates will probably be cut in about half, simply because we're going in a large pool. Now, we've had very good insurance rates for our size company. Other companies in the airline industry that are even a little bit bigger than us say, oh boy, we would love Midwest Airlines rates. We have a great reputation for taking care of our customers. We have had for over 20 years single-digit attrition losses in the insurance business. And that means slips and falls, somebody falls and there's some medical cost or minor cost. That's very unusual. Very few airlines in the world have single-digit attrition losses. So by managing our business carefully, we have gotten our insurance rates down a lot for our size company. But when you're dealing with a huge, huge company, our insurance rates will cut in half. So we'll save a couple $1 million a year just on insurance rates because we'll go to the market with the consortium. So there are some advantages. Fuel purchases. Northwest buys fuel at probably 3 to 5 cents a gallon cheaper than we do.
How big a concern is fuel prices right now?
Fuel with oil, the other day going over $86 a barrel. It's our largest single cost. It certainly is a big concern. For this year, we hedged about 90% of our fuel in January. We hedged at $58 a barrel, and it sounded a little high at the time. We said, boy, I wish it would have been $54. Now it looks like it was a pretty smart move. And we've hedged about 25% of our fuel for the first half of 2008 at about $72 a barrel. Again, that sounded really high to us until the last few weeks. Fuel is one of those things that in the long run you don't really have control over other than through hedging, which really just kind of takes out the peaks and valleys. Over the long haul, you're going to pay what fuel costs. One of the hedges we did was buying more fuel-efficient airplanes. The 717s that we have that replaced our DC-9s are about 23% more fuel-efficient than the DC-9s that they replaced. So that's kind of a long-term permanent hedge. But as fuel goes up, the industry that has really cut costs pretty carefully in the last few years will have to pass that along in terms of ticket prices. And I think some of the fare increases in the last month or two are because of fuel going up. And of course that gets balanced against the economy. Is the economy going to stay strong? Is demand going to stay strong? So it's a very tough industry. But fuel is our largest single cost, and you really have very little control over it in the long run.
Some of you are probably aware of this, but Tim Hoeksema is very involved in a group called Spirit of Milwaukee, which is an organization designed to promote Milwaukee to folks outside the community. And I want to get your observations as a guy who does business in this community, who is involved in activity that benefits this community. Give me your assessment of Milwaukee right now. What do you think is going well? What do we need to work on?
Well, I think in some respects there's extremes. I see a lot of positive things going on in terms of downtown renovation, some of the things going on right here as you drive up and down Wisconsin Avenue, people moving back more into downtown area, the renovations, the lofts, and all the neat things happening in the city, I think are all very positive. And I've been here 19 years in this community. I've seen a lot of very positive changes along those ways. You look at the Milwaukee 7, you get 7 counties that are beginning to work together and to communicate and to cooperate. Through Spirit, we're working on enhancing the image and the brand identity of Milwaukee across the country. And that was one of the reasons that Spirit got started, because a little like Midwest Airlines back some years ago, you know, we had what we thought was a pretty good little company, but a lot of people didn't know about it. And so Milwaukee's a great city. We're trying to get the word out so more people know about it. On the other side of the continuum, though, there are needs in this community. When you look at education, the dropout rates in the inner city in terms of high school, kids not graduating from high school. You look at teen pregnancy rates, very young teens in many respects in the city. We have a lot of work to do in this community to really, you know, pull those two things closer together. So there's some real dichotomy going on.
You're involved in some of that work. You and your wife are active with a school called Heart Love, which is in the Milwaukee Central City. Why did you do that? Is that part of your philosophy about being a citizen of the world?
Yeah, I think, you know, if I put a business hat on, I think it's important that businesses get involved in the communities that they live in to make those communities better. And certainly giving money and things like United Way and all that stuff, you know, do a lot of good. I happen to think that getting involved personally and giving of your personal time and energy and effort is even better if you can do that. And Jan and I have been involved in Heart Love Place or inner city work for about 13 years. And I will tell you, it's probably 90% Jan and about 10% me, but she's down in the inner city on Martin Luther King Drive, just north of Locust, probably 3 or 4 days a week, really trying to make a difference in people's lives. And as you get down there and you get involved and you see some of the things going on, you recognize there are huge needs. And lots of single-parent families, very, very few fathers in many of the households of the kids we work with. Teen pregnancy is you know, 14, 15-year-old kids having little ones. You know, you go into some of the houses, you open the refrigerator, there's literally no food in it, they don't have heat, or, you know, just lots of problems. And lots of us in this room can make a difference in that by giving of our time and energy and effort and going down and making a difference and trying to provide hope, encouragement. And we started working with some of these kids when they were 5, 6 years old, and now they're graduated from high school, and I look way up to these guys. But to see the difference in their lives and see them now trying to reach out and help and encourage other people in the city is really very encouraging. But there's lots of needs down there that all of us can work toward filling.
Let me take your questions now, and if you have anything you'd like to ask, obviously Mr. Hoeksema is ready to talk about the sale, the hostile takeover attempt, whatever you have on your mind today. So just raise your hand and maybe say who you are and ask your question. Mike.
Newspaper recently indicated that the first baby boomer applied for Social Security. I would surmise that in the next 20 years, a greater portion of the baby boom generation will be traveling. I would submit on behalf of the baby boomers that our interest is more in comfort than cost. And the Midwest Airlines first started in Milwaukee. It was the comfort, it was the identity, it was the top shelf way of traveling. Will the new ownership return or enhance that trend or reputation of Midwest Airlines?
Yeah, I think TPG, one of the things they saw in Midwest Airlines was a differentiated product. They looked at our business plan and said, you know, going forward, this is an airline that will be different than the AirTrans of the world or the low-cost carriers of the world. And that was something that they embraced as a way to have a consistent edge in the marketplace. So as we make changes, and as we've had to make changes in this industry, I mean, in the early days, for the handful of us in this room who flew years ago, when we had shrimp scampi and filet mignon and complimentary wine and champagne, I see some heads nodding and some of the younger heads going, huh? You know, we've had to change some of those things. 9/11 changed everything in this industry, so we've had to change some of those things. But we've really tried to be very careful to maintain our brand, to maintain differentiation, to maintain comfortable seating and things like that that are important, to add destinations that we think are in demand and will be more in demand as more baby boomers retire. And so we're keeping our eye focused on still trying to be a better product than is out there in the marketplace.
Before we take the next question, I have to ask you, the AirTran is talking about adding some gates in Milwaukee. Is this payback for the spurned offer?
Well, AirTran is apparently going to pick up 2 additional gates and add about 7 employees. And that was reported in the paper this past Saturday. And not surprising, they've been adding a little bit of service here over time. They announced a couple months ago they're going to be adding Phoenix in December, adding some seasonal Florida service, which they kind of pop into in the winter and out of in the summer. So not particularly surprising. They have 60 airplanes on order and don't have a lot of homes for them, and so they're looking for places to grow. So not surprising that they would consider Milwaukee for a little bit of that growth. So not surprising you'd see a little bit of growth from them.
All right. Next question. Right here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a couple of else in the plan.
Go ahead.
You had said that you're expecting about $1.5 million cost savings due to going private, not having to comply with all the regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley. In light of the fact that all these private equity funds have such a short investment horizon, is there not rationale to continue to comply with a lot of requirements, maintaining those expenses in the sense that you might be spun off shortly and still need to look like a public company?
Yeah, we will continue to comply with all the principles of Sarbanes-Oxley and continue to do that work internally. We'll save some money on outside audits of that. But we'll continue to do that because it's certainly possible in 5 years we could be a public company again. So we're not going to turn our back on the principles of Sarbanes-Oxley, and in fact the rules of Sarbanes-Oxley. And we audit that stuff internally. We just won't have to also audit it externally for the next few years. But we'll continue to be in compliance with all of that right along, absolutely.
Okay, so you're not going to have any external audits of the internal controls?
Yeah, we'll have internal audits of all that. We won't have to have, we'll still do our normal external audits as well, but just this extra piece of external audit to audit the audit of Sarbanes-Oxley won't be necessary, but we'll still audit our Sarbanes-Oxley procedure. So very good question.
I saw another hand over here. Oh, sorry.
I'm a professor over in College of Communication and I teach public relations, so I was thrilled to hear you talk about multiple stakeholders, not only shareholders. But could you address the difficulty of communicating with these various group of people because of their interest in the sale would have been different?
Well, certainly for the 9 months, communication was a constant challenge for us. There was things out in the marketplace that we didn't always agree with. We tried to be very careful and as I referenced earlier, take the high road and be very careful how we responded to things and not knee-jerk, but do it in a professional way. We tried communicating with all of our stakeholders. And if you go back and really look at some of our communication, you'll see in lots of the communication that we talked about shareholders, but we also talked about the other stakeholders, about the Wisconsin law that allows us to consider the other stakeholders. Internally, we communicated constantly with our employees. They want to know what was going on, and we thought the best way to keep our employees focused on the customers and doing the job that they were hired to do would be to be sure that they knew what was going on in the takeover attempt. So we communicated pretty regularly internally as well. And there's some things we couldn't talk about. Near the end, the newspapers and media had it pretty well over and done with, and AirTran was here, and then, there was kind of a shift in the tone in the media near the end that I think AirTran had everybody convinced that it was over, and the media was kind of saying that. We couldn't talk about some of the things that were going on. But part of our responsibility to do the best job for all of our stakeholders, and certainly shareholders are the biggest piece of that, was to try and get a competitive process. And I talked to many airlines. I talked to probably 6 airlines in serious talks, and 4 private equity firms in serious talks to look for options that would be the best for all of the stakeholders. And as it turns out, it was the best for the shareholders, $17 cash, compared to an AirTran offer of $10 cash and $6.27 in stock, without a financing guarantee on the cash portion. You wouldn't sell your house without, 3 months from now, without somebody having a loan guarantee to buy it. And AirTran did not have a financing commitment on the $10 portion. And so we clearly did the best job for our shareholders, but at the same time came up with an option, I think, that did the best job for our employees, for the communities, and for vendors and customers. And so, but that was not an easy task. It took lots of hard work. And so we couldn't communicate everything that we would have liked to along the way, but we communicated as much as we could, and we tried to be strategic in our communication, not knee-jerk and overreact to every little thing that came out every day, but really try to get the important message points out. And I think Carol Skornica, who is our spokesperson, I think did a very credible job of trying to be on message and get out the things that were important, and trying to operate a little above some of the chaff that was going on. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I should say Carol has an interesting perspective, too, as your legal counsel, but also your primary spokesperson.
Carol should be sitting here today instead of me, because certainly from a legal point of view, she was in the middle of all the legal, I know, of all the legal aspects, but also in terms of developing communication strategy and being the spokesperson, was in a very, very visible position, and I think did a terrific job. I've jokingly said that if I had her job, I'd probably be in jail now for murdering reporters. So, but present company accepted. Sorry, not all reporters.
Other questions? Yes.
Jason Ardanowski from Political Science. I'm a former employee of Northwest Airlines, their Detroit hub, part-time, and one thing I found working for Northwest was that people enjoyed flying, but they didn't enjoy the experience in the airport trying to fly. Long lines at the ticket counters, surly service agents, the waiting security. What does Midwest Airlines do to make that in the airport pre- and post-flight experience wonderful for their customers?
Well, it's hard to make it wonderful. We try and make it as good as we can, because we don't have control over everything. When you look at Milwaukee Airport, I think by and large now it flows better than Detroit. But early on, after September 11th, there was real bottlenecks at the TSA checkpoint going down the D concourse. And we fought very hard. There was only 3 or 4 lines to go through for security. We fought very hard. I had to actually go to Washington to the chief operating officer of the TSA to get a couple more of these magnetometers released to Milwaukee so that they could expand, and now we have 6 of those, so it would be so we worked very hard with all the other components. The airport then had to build out some additional space for us once TSA agreed to give us more equipment, and so we worked very hard with all the parties involved to try and be sure that the flow for the passengers is as good as it can be. We operate, obviously, we serve 52 cities across the country. When you get out to LaGuardia and Washington, D.C., and Boston, some of those places, where we're a relatively small player, we have less control over those types of things. But even there, we work with the other airlines and the airports to try and make it as good a situation as we can. And then try and have responsive customer service representatives who, if there is a problem, they're at least looking to try and help you and take care of your problem and be responsive to your needs. And you got to work hard at that every day as well. But it's, traveling is a little tougher today than it was 25 years ago, unfortunately. And part of that is the air traffic control system. This country has an antiquated air traffic control system. It's still working with tubes from the 1950s, literally. And we need a satellite system, a next generation air traffic control system, which is in the process now of being funded by Congress. But there's some big battles on how to fund it and how to split up the cost of it. And unfortunately, it's a 10 to 20 year solution. But it's starting now, or will be starting shortly. And that's imperative to try and minimize the delays. The airspace could be used more efficiently and effectively right now than it is if we had higher tech satellite navigation and air traffic control systems. So that's a whole huge area in and of itself that the industry is working very, very hard on right now to get air traffic control updated so that it's a better flowing system, and that will relieve some of the delays and all the problems and misconnections and all that at the airport. So it all really goes hand in hand.
You've mentioned 9/11 a couple of times, and I think everybody knows how life as a traveler has changed since 9/11. How much do you and others in the airline industry worry about another attack, something that dramatically transforms the business climate as 9/11 did?
Well, Mike, that's always out there, I think, in everybody's mind, in the airline business and in other businesses. And we work very hard as an industry with TSA, with the FAA, with the Department of Transportation to try and be sure that our system is as safe as it possibly can be. And obviously TSA is...
Do you think it is?
I really do. I think traveling today is many times safer than it was before 9/11 in terms of terrorists and things like that. No question about it. No question. And a lot of the things that have been changed and improved are behind the scenes that you don't see even in the airport environment in terms of some of the intelligence and things like that. There's been a sea change in some of those things that we can't even talk about. But there's a lot going on out there to try and be sure that we have a very safe air transport system.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody over there? Yeah, Jeff.
I have a question about your assessment of the business climate here in Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin. You mentioned the Kansas City operation. That would be one point of comparison. There was an article in today's paper about a software company, and the president of this company is on record with some concerns about what he regarded as hostilities trying to get up and running and expand here, particularly in Milwaukee. What are your thoughts on the overall business climate?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of effort to try and make it better. I think there's still some pockets where it probably isn't better yet. But as I look at the Milwaukee 7 effort to try and encourage other companies to locate here, there's, for the first time in the 19 years I've been here, some, I think, good dialogue going on in the 7-county area. That had been tried and attempted many, many times in the years I've been here, and I think it's finally working now. But there's a lot of distance to go between getting 7 people together and talking and having kind of a meeting of the minds and then making things happen over time. So I think we have a ways to go in terms of the business climate that people look at Milwaukee first in terms of a place to locate a company. But I think there's a lot of people working on that. It's just going to take some time. I look at Rockwell International, which moved their headquarters here a number of years ago from California. I think that was a real positive thing in terms of the community. Air transportation was important in that, and we had grown enough at the time that they had told us that air transportation and us being here was a big part of that. So it takes lots of cooperation in terms of infrastructure and transportation and highways and all those types of things. Education, I think, is a big piece of that, and we really have some work to do in education in this community to help that. That's one of the bigger needs that I see.
Final question or two, and we'll wrap things up. Anybody have a final question here? Let me go over here first.
Well, certainly staffing is always a concern, and that's why I mentioned education in terms of long-term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's important we have a good education system, even at the graduate rates in high school in this community. We have been pretty fortunate at getting people to come to Midwest Airlines. We've worked hard to have a good reputation, to be a good place to work. So we've done pretty well at filling our needs, but it's a constant struggle. Obviously, one of the things I'm working on now is succession planning, which is very important in any business. But as I look toward getting into that baby boomer and not being the first one to retire, but in not too many years, that's something that's very important, and we're looking at that throughout our ranks. But we've been very fortunate to hire some good, bright young people that will be there to come up when some of us retire at Midwest Airlines.
Hey, Kearney, do you have a question? Okay. All right. Well, I want you to know that, incidentally, when people pop out of the room, it's not because of how interesting we are. They actually have classes to go to and have to study and things like that. So I'll wrap it up there. I want to thank you very much for being with us today. And again, let's give a warm round of applause to Tim Hoeksema.